Hey friends, Ash here with Gents. Hope that you're doing well. Today we tackle the subject once again of fragrance hype. Yes, hyped fragrances. Oh boy, fragrance hype means different things to different people. For some people, if I or anybody else out there says, hey, fragrance A here, I like this, they'll take a look at that and go,
stop hyping that. How dare you hype the fragrance?
Sometimes it's that simple, it's saying you like something. Ooh, that's hype, boys. Other times it's incessantly harping on how much you dig it and forcing it down people's throats, which sometimes you do, not even realizing you're doing it because you like it so much. But there's a dark side to hype, and that's what we're covering today. Fragrances that you guys out there purchased because it was hyped that you hated. So let's check these out. And this is courtesy of you guys answering my question on my community tab, where I asked you guys, hey, what's a hyped fragrance that you bought that didn't work for you, and why didn't it work? These are some of your answers. First up, we've got Hector Ramos, who says, hands down, Bentley from Intense. Smells like a high school football team riding across the desert in an old school bus with no AC. If someone gifted me this bottle, I would be offended. Hector. Oh, it's brutal. Brutal, Hector. Now, Bentley from Intense was on this a number of times, actually. A lot of people said Bentley from Intense, I don't like it. Now, in my opinion, Bentley from Intense is a great buy. Doesn't cost all that much, and it's gonna get you pretty close to some much more expensive niche fragrances, namely Chambre Noir from Olfactive Studio and Idole de Luban. But it definitely is not gonna be for everybody. It's certainly a divisive type of scent. It's not an easy to wear scent. It's not overly versatile. You gotta wear it in cool weather, leans more toward nighttime use or more formal situations. For a cheapie, I think the quality is really high, and that's where the problem comes in here, because a lot of people are gonna smell it and think, dude, the quality is insane for what I just paid for this, and they're gonna talk about it and be really excited about it. And then other people are gonna say, well, he liked it a lot and it didn't cost that much, so I'm gonna go ahead and buy it for myself. And so a lot of people who maybe don't like that type of scent end up buying it because it is readily available and not all that expensive, and then this is what happens. Thanks for sharing, Hector, and all the other people that mentioned this one, because like I said, it was a lot of people. Up next, we got FitzDonald. I blind bought FBlack by Salvatore Ferragamo because of all the hype. Its opening was nothing special, but the dry down was reminding me of a powdered diaper. The only blind buy fail of mine. The bottle is now in the trash, where it should be. And this one came up a bunch of times also. Most of the other people mentioned Jeremy fragrance with this one, because there was a time where Jeremy really enjoyed the fragrance and a lot of people scooped it up. FBlack for me was always decent for a cheapie, but I was never in love with it. And I think that's kind of the reputation that it had until it did pick up that big steam of hype. You know, it was viewed as a decent, cheap fragrance that you could pick up a lot of times at TJ Maxx. It was okay. But then it hit that hype level, quantum level maximum where everybody was talking about it, and it just couldn't quite live up to that hype, I think, for a lot of people. Up next, Caleb Yerk, YSL Eau de Parfum. It smelled really lovely on the tester card, and the tester was a bit older, so the top had worn down a bit when I tested on my skin. I really like apple and sage, but the combination just overpowered the rest of the fragrance, and I can only smell those notes after a few hours. It's like a sharp, fresh scent that becomes too sharp because it lasts so long. It's a fantastic fragrance, just not on my skin. Performs like a beast though. And again, YSL Eau de Parfum actually mentioned a few times here, which is a little bit surprising. Eau de Parfum, obviously big time performer. It's a blue fragrance, lots of versatility, huge compliment factor. But the opening especially can seem to be a bit divisive. Some people think it's far too sweet, especially with the apple in there. Now, I've said a bunch of times I like YSL Eau de Parfum a lot. It's one of my go-to dumb reach fragrances. But for some of you out there, it's overwhelming, it's sickening, it's too sweet, and you don't like it. Then we got one from Justin Jackson, Oud for Greatness. It smells funky to me. A friend said that I smell like cheese. Luckily, I just got a decant, but I was so excited to try it. It's amazing how so many people can love a fragrance, but a few people can hate it. You just described fragrances in a nutshell. Yes. No matter what the fragrance is, it doesn't matter if it's the best-selling fragrance of all time, you'll have those people that love it, and you will have people who loudly scream from the hilltops that they hate it and it's the worst thing ever made. And technically, neither person is wrong because the fragrance is what it is to you, and however you perceive it is how you perceive it. Now, with some things like a laptop, for example, you could point to the specifications of the laptop, and you could say, this laptop is better than this laptop because this graphics card is better than that graphics card and all that stuff. So you can really clearly say this outperforms this technically, and so therefore this is superior. But with the fragrance, it's just how you perceive it. So even if one is very expensive in terms of the ingredients used and the other is very cheap, if the cheap one smells better to a person, they'll say, nah, I think that one's better. It just is what it is. And with Oud for Greatness, a lot of people will actually say that it smells funky to them. Maybe not because it smells like cheese to them, but for a multitude of different reasons. Of course, any kind of fragrance that relies on oud, even if the oud itself is not overly animalic or anything, is not going to work for everybody. Up next, QN. Shout out QN. Mont Blanc Individual. It was hyped so hard by Jeremy. After getting it for around $25, I was quite psyched, only to be let down because it gave me a sickeningly sweet note from the raspberry, I guess. It also had this disgusting synthetic creaminess to it. Tried to give it a chance over the course of 3 years. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore and gave it to my cousin. So Individual is a fragrance that I also didn't really go for. There was a time where I really tried to give it more wear and I thought I was coming around to like it more, but eventually I just really decided, nah, it's just not for me. It has that similarity to Yop Homme, which also is a fragrance that's tormented me over the years. Like you said, too sickeningly sweet. I agree there. Next up, JW, Rasasi Hawass. It was hyped a lot in the fragrance community. I remember I was excited to get it in, and when it finally arrived, I did a first impression spray session. It's kind of a tongue twister. Instantly, I felt like I needed one of those Walter White Jesse Pinkman gas masks to save my lungs from the bombardment of cloying sweetness. Nice Breaking Bad reference. It was like cotton candy sublimated into the air, and that's all I was breathing. I still wore it a few times to test it out, but it had the same effect. Even 2 sprays of that stuff was like the fragrance equivalent of Fat Man and Little Boy. Anyway, it happens. You live, you learn. Yeah, Hawass really was one of those hype beasts, hype monsters, an alternative to Invictus Aqua. Nowadays, people don't realize quite as much unless they were around back then, but when Paco Rabanne Invictus Aqua came out, it got a ton of hype, and then it was discontinued. Now, they brought it back, not the exact same way, the bottle changed, the fragrance changed a bit, but that initial launch of Invictus Aqua got so much love that when it was canned, everybody was freaking, looking for something to replace it, and Hawass was that something. Obviously, definitely sweet, and it works for a lot of people, but for you, my friend, it does not. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. Sometimes that cotton candy, bubblegummy sweetness, it gets to be too much for me too. Up next, Joshua Fournier. Hopefully I pronounced that right. If I didn't, my bad. PDM Cologne. There's just something about it that I don't find enjoyable. It's not a bad smell, but it's got this earthy something vibe. Maybe vegetable is the best way to describe it. So many reviewers I've seen have really hyped how amazing it is. But for me, it just smells weird on my skin. My wife is certainly not a fan either. Yeah, so on this one, I'm completely in agreement. I don't like cologne. I think it's probably my least favorite Parfums de Marly fragrance, actually. Now, some people love it, absolutely love it, and I've got friends that love it, but I just never did. It smelled like a worse version of Tom Ford Noir Anthracite to an extent. Like you said, earthy, kind of vegetal. The spices in there didn't really do it for me. I'm just not a fan of cologne. Up next, Noel Rodriguez. Halloween Man X. Ugh. I was ecstatic to get this fragrance. I love the smell of coffee and the smell of leather. So to hear about a cheap fragrance with coffee and leather in it that everybody seems to love sounded incredible. When I sprayed it on my skin, I was appalled. To me, it smells like a dank bowl of rubber bands and moist hand towels. I have no idea if I got a bad batch or if it's just my skin, but I just absolutely cannot wear it. I've had to scrub it off every time I try to give it a chance. Not sure what to say here. I'm a big fan of Halloween Man X. I absolutely 100% get the coffee, actually much more coffee than leather. The leather is there for sure, but I get that roast coffee immediately as soon as I spray it on. And my wife loves it as well, so it's a win-win for me. Halloween Man X did pop up multiple times though. Other people had similar kind of reactions where it just didn't work for them. It's been one of my favorite cheapy finds over the past few years, and it's a bummer to see that some people it just doesn't work for whatsoever and just comes across smelling grotesque. And that kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, where some fragrances are perceived differently by other people and they just don't like it at all. I mean, going back to the last fragrance, Cologne, I don't like that. I don't like to smell it, but I know for a fact that some of you guys watching this video think it's amazing. It's just the world we live in with fragrances, I guess. Up next, Florida Sam Hermes H24. First new mint release from Hermes in a long time. Everyone was stoked. Terre d'Hermes is one of, if not my favorites of all time. Of course, it's blind buy worthy. It's Hermes. Nope. Smells like I spilled Arizona lemon tea on my shirt while waiting in line at the dry cleaners. More boring than C-SPAN. I also was hyped for H24, like you, and H24 I just do not like. I know that for some people, it was an immediate love. For other people, they've come around to really enjoy it. I still think it's pretty bad. Well, I mean, I like the opening. It's okay. It's green, sweet, a little interesting. But once that settles, oof. The overload of sclarine is just not very pleasant for me to smell. Fuzzy, flat, kind of metallic steam vibe going. I'm not a fan. I'm hopeful that they come out with a flanker at some point that improves it for me, you know, makes changes to the formula, and then I say, oh, now this is it. You know, they've come around and they've made something I'm really interested in. But H24, as it stands here today, is one of my most disappointing fragrance line launches over the past, couldn't even tell you, 5-10 years. We're gonna finish up with D. Cruz Moschino Toy Boy. Smells like a funeral. Short and sweet and to the point. So I myself don't get the funeral vibes. I mean, maybe I'll go grab it and spray it on. Let's see. Gonna spray it on a tester strip. I mean, maybe if you're associating the funeral with all the flowers that they put around the casket and like the entrance and all that stuff, maybe. Usually when people say something smells like a funeral, they're referring to like a churchy, incensey kind of smell, something like that. This is more so lots and lots of florals. I think it's really fresh. It smells nice. I know some people are not a fan at all of Toy Boy, and I will admit that for the overwhelming majority probably of guys out there, this is not really a day-to-day kind of fragrance that they would wear or that they would wear ever. So it's definitely the type of scent that's taking chances. And sometimes when you're jaded because you've smelled so much stuff, something like this will be really interesting. You'll be like, oh, look, it's something slightly different. Interesting. I like it. So I can absolutely see this one not working for a bunch of different people out there, but it doesn't remind me particularly of a funeral. Again, though, I'm not right here. You're not wrong for having that idea pop into your head. With all the things I've smelled, there are different things that have popped into my head, like this smells like that other people would say, no, you're completely wrong. Sorry that Toy Boy smells like a funeral to you, though. Pretty sure you're not going to be reaching for that one anytime soon. So there we have 10 hyped fragrance fails. Thank you to everybody that put your submission in. There were hundreds of you, and I appreciate it. And we'll do another interactive video like this very soon. So keep your eye open on that community tab. As always, thank you guys for hanging with me. Thank you for your support. Stay safe out there. I'll see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys later.